Welcome to Six Sigma for Greater Cincinnati YMCA's e-learning Module 1, Introduction and Overview. Luke 14:28 says, "Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it?" This biblical principle sets the foundation for our journey into a new way of planning and executing YMCA projects. We are going to learn about project management tools that can help us estimate and execute projects with better results, and the Six Sigma methodology that will help to solve problems in less time with better solutions. An education of these tools will be delivered in 5 modules. The module you are currently listening to is our basic introduction and overview of project management and Six Sigma. Module 2 will be a deeper dive into the basic project management and Six Sigma defined tools. Module 3 will help us understand the data collection process. Module 4 will help us identify root cause and develop meaningful change. The last module will teach us how to establish a new normal by creating sustainable change. Let's start by talking about project management. Learning some basic project management tools will help us plan, organize, and execute projects with greater confidence and clarity. We will learn how to build a team, plan, manage, and close out a project by using such tools as a project charter, a project plan, and a RACI. We are also going to learn about Six Sigma and how it is a rigorous, focused, and highly effective process for organizing an improvement or change initiative. So what exactly is Six Sigma? It can be confusing or even downright scary when we see Greek symbols, and we might start to think about statistics. But Six Sigma isn't all about statistics. Yes, we will use data to understand more about our projects, but the analytical approach to problem solving is going to be our main focus. The Six Sigma approach to solving problems is known as DMAIC, or DMAIC. Note that DMAIC stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control. We will learn more about these 5 steps in just a moment. Let's start by talking about where the name Six Sigma comes from. Customers tell us what they want, and our processes try to deliver those expectations. But our processes don't always deliver the same outcome every time, which creates variability, with a high, low, and average. This is often depicted in a bell curve, where the average delivery is the high point of the curve. Sigma is a measure of process variation, also known as the standard deviation. The DMAIC methodology helps increase the sigma level for a given process. A 6 sigma level is attained when a total of 6 standard deviations fit between the sample mean and the nearest customer expectation limit. That sounds complicated, right? So let's take a look at a couple of examples to make sense of this. Here is an illustration of a 3 sigma process. The standard deviation of this process is too large. In this case, the process variation is as wide as what the customer is willing to accept. This means that a large number of defects are projected, 2,700 to be exact. This means that for every 1 million instances, 2,700 of them will be unacceptable. That's too many. Notice the visual difference here for a 6 sigma process. The variation is much smaller than what the customer expects, and thus a very small number of defects are projected, 0.002 to be exact. That's much better. You don't have to be an expert statistician to use Six Sigma. Just know that using DMAIC can lead to better solutions with fewer defects. For example, consider a mailroom that loses 20,000 articles of mail per hour. But after using the Six Sigma methodology, they are able to only lose 7 articles of mail per hour. In the define phase, we will learn how to start projects with a strong goal and clear charter. This is where we'll apply the project management tools to plan and build our team. We will learn more about define in the next e-learning module called Getting Started. Module 3 will explain the measure phase, where we will learn how to create and use different charting techniques to turn data into information. Module 4 will demonstrate methods to find the root cause of our problem and apply the appropriate changes in the improve phase. Module 5 will teach us how to close the loop in the control phase. I'd like to show you an example of a Six Sigma project. You don't fully understand the Six Sigma process yet, and that's okay. I just want you to see these tools and how they can successfully apply in our organization. This was the first completed Six Sigma project for Greater Cincinnati YMCA. It certified Heather and Aaron as Six Sigma Green Belts through Xavier University. This project's topic is expense reduction through vendor consolidation. In order to understand the project scope, we must first understand the nature of our annual budget. The big budget is around $41 million, with many smaller buckets assigned to various needs. A big chunk of the budget goes towards employee salaries and benefits. Supplies consist of almost $2.5 million, under which there are 3 categories: IT, facilities, and housekeeping and admin. This project is specifically aimed at reducing the $1.3 million housekeeping and admin supply expense budget. The project charter shows a goal of reducing housekeeping and admin supply expenses by 5%. The current annual expenditure was about $1.3 million, and the projected project savings were $64,000 annual. You can also see an overview of the purpose, improvements, and deliverables in this document. The rest of the charter shows other aspects of the project, such as risks and assumptions. Critical to quality characteristics were identified to make sure we are always keeping the customer expectations in mind. Voice of the customer, or VOC, was also documented for clarity. The RACI chart shows members of the project team and who was responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for each major task. The project plan shows a timeline of how the project was executed. Notice the months along the bottom that show exactly when a task was planned and completed. A high-level process map shows the current as-is process for obtaining housekeeping and admin supplies when the project was started. A closer look shows several areas that could be improved. And this is waste identification. The SIPOC is a more detailed look at each of the process steps, including suppliers, inputs, outputs, and customers. This Pareto chart shows the breakdown of the overall $2.4 million supply expense budget. A more detailed Pareto shows how the housekeeping and admin portion of the budget is allocated. The project team identified constraints that governed how much of the budget could realistically be affected. In the measure phase, the team collected data on which suppliers were being used for each category. This analysis shows that Nickerson was the most common office supplier. And this one shows that Phillips was the top supplier for housekeeping. There was very little consistency for coffee suppliers. In the analysis phase, the team used a fishbone diagram to identify causes that lead to the effect lack of vendor control. There were 5 primary causes: lack of data, process complexity, high cost, defects, and no standard process. A closer comparison of the process map and fishbone diagram revealed common problems: a need for a simpler, standardized process for vendor selection, discount pricing, and invoice coding. Further data analysis showed that a switch to Staples and Nickerson for all branches and centers could save $8,000 annually. A switch to Phillips for all branches and centers could save almost $9,000 annually. The team analyzed possible savings for switching to Staples for coffee supplies. Although it would save $16,000, it would also nearly add the same amount in employee time, which we call soft costs. Therefore, no change was implemented for coffee supplies. The big savings for this project came in consolidating fitness equipment vendors to YPG for all branches. The team created a new process map to be followed for housekeeping and supply expenses that included a standard vendor selection process, standard discount pricing, standard invoice coding, and no more payments with credit cards or petty cash. In order to control these changes, new guidelines for standard invoice coding were delivered during a web conference in September 2017 and were included in the 2018 budget book distributed to all locations. The team used a failure modes and effects analysis to identify risks and record action recommendations. Gathering data after changes were implemented showed over $45,000 in savings achieved by mid-year 2018. Finally, the team shared their results with other project teams working on similar targets. In future modules, we will see how Six Sigma helped with other strategic projects. This concludes the Six Sigma for Greater Cincinnati's e-learning Module 1. Thanks for listening.